Hello and welcome back, folks. Thanks for joining me for another sneak peek into the Hideaway's Gym League, and I am bringing to you a mono bug type battle. It's myself, obviously representing the Hideaway's gym leaders as the bug type leader, and I have a challenger here called Zin Power XL, and Zin has decided to bring along a rather threatening looking team. We have Kyurem Black as his choice for legendary Pokemon, and it is a monster, I'll tell you. It has a massive attack stat, and it's not a Pokemon that I get to see all too often, so I'm not entirely familiar with the potential sets that it can run. We have a Landorus T, and I would bet my bottom dollar that's a defensive Stealth Rock variant. We have his only potential Mega Pokemon being the Alakazam. In the back we have a Raikou. It could be a mixture of anything. We have a very likely contender for Fire Punch, I'd say, on that Conkeldurr. It's probably the Assault Vest Drain Punch Iron Fist variation, and I'm pretty sure you can get Fire and Ice Punch on there, so I'll have to be careful of coverage moves there. And we have a Clefable, which could be unaware to avoid any of my boosting moves, or it could be the Magic Guard Life Orb variant with the coverage special attacks, and I'm bringing my own little Volbeat, the one which has as Paralysis, Confuse Ray, Trick, and the Iron Ball combination. Along with Alden Core, I have Golisopod, and everyone knows what that does. I have an Assault Vested Buzzwole, which is carrying Poison Jab and Ice Punch. I have a Scarf Heracross, absolutely predictable but absolutely reliable. Then we have Mega Pinsir for the Quick Attack Return Aerialate combination, and we round it all out with a Stealth Rock Rapid Spin knockoff Armaldo that's there for my hazard setting and control. So if we look at his team, I actually figured he was going to lead out with his Landorus T, and then I would start tricking items onto it. However, he goes for the Clefable, and my options remain the same. I can still go for the Trick, and I end up taking its Life Orb, which means that this is most definitely going to be the Magic Guard Life Orb set with the special attack coverage and Life Orb in place. The ability stops you from taking Life Orb Recoil as a secondary effect of the item. You still get the power boost, but Clefable's own ability means that it no longer gets the recoil damage, so it's the best of both worlds in that combination. However, I've stolen the Life Orb to at least rob it of some of that power, and it does take out my little Volbeat, which is a shame, so he gets off to an early 6-5 start, but I am not about to let that best me. So I bring in my Golisopod, and I realize that, yeah, I can quite easily take a Flamethrower from this thing without its Life Orb, and it's not stab, and it's not even super effective because of my water typing. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can handle that. I'll bring in Golisopod. He'll quite happily take that hit, and little do I know, this thing also is packing a huge Thunderbolt attack. So Golisopod's emergency exit procs, that means he swaps out and I get to choose what comes in next, and I decide, screw it, we'll go for Pinsir. Pinsir is going to be able to knock this thing down in one hit. So my opponent sees that coming, decides he's going to get out of the way, and instead brings in his defensive Landorus T. The Intimidate goes off. I go down to -1. However, I'm not really able to stay in against the Landorus. A Pinsir is a very powerful Pokemon. It did get slightly nerfed with the reduction in the power of its ability in this generation. I believe Aerialate now only gives plus 20% to normal moves rather than the plus 30 it had before. So instead of staying in, I decide I'm going to swap into Armaldo, because there is most certainly a rock type attack coming, and a rock type was indeed on its way. I got hit with the Stone Edge, so I was going to be knocked out in a 2-hit KO. However, I realized that my opponent is very likely to take this opportunity to set up rocks, so I decided I'm going to do exactly the same, because going for an attack on this turn isn't too important. He does go for the Stone Edge, so I'm taken down. However, my rocks are up on his side of the field, his are up on my side of the field, and neither of us have a solid way to be able to remove those Stealth Rocks. So we are now both going to be having to deal with the very real problem that Stealth Rocks present to our teams. So it's obviously a pretty bad thing for my team, especially considering that Mega Pinsir is going to lose 50% of its HP to those Stealth Rocks, and Golisopod doesn't have much HP left to spare in general. However, his most powerful Pokemon, being the Kyurem Black, is going to take a huge chunk to Stealth Rock damage as well, so I'm pretty happy with the trade overall. And in comes Buzzwole, does get a wonderful Earthquake attack onto this thing and brings it down. Now, in comes Alakazam, and I realize that this Alakazam is most certainly going to be able to outspeed me, so I decide I'm going to swap back out and go into Golisopod, because Alakazam is not going to be able to knock out my Golisopod, and I'm like, oh crap, maybe it will. Because I failed to take into account the damage that these Stealth Rocks might do, so there is potential that he goes for a Calm Mind on this turn, in which case First Impression will outspeed and knock down this Alakazam. However, I decide to swap in and just see how it goes. Instead, my opponent does go for the Psychic, so I do end up losing Golisopod, but I'm not too worried, because Golisopod's priority is not the only way I have to counter a fast Psychic type. No, in comes Heracross. If you've seen any of my videos before, you've probably seen this Heracross in action. It is a Choice Scarf, 4 attacks Heracross. You pick your best super effective attack, and you try to sweep as many Pokemon as possible. Moxie kicks in, and you gain +1 for every knockout that you can get, so you do not necessarily have to be thinking about purely the Pokemon in front of you. However, between the Pokemon he had, I didn't want to lock myself into close combat because it wouldn't do much against, well, nothing would really have done much against the Landorus in any sense. However, I didn't want to risk knockoff not killing the Mega Alakazam, since you cannot knock off a Mega Stone, so I decided I'll go for the Mega Horn. That will get the one-hit KO for sure, and indeed, then I swap into my Buzzwole. Why? Because Buzzwole can take any physical attack this Landorus decides to throw at it, and it doesn't care, because this thing has a massive physical attack and massive physical defense. Not great on the speed though. Instead, I do have this in my arsenal. Go for the Lunge. Lunge on the switch. Lunge is a new move brought in this generation. It is a bug type move. I believe it has 80 power, but it has a 100% chance to reduce your opponent's attack by 1 stage whenever it hits. So attack them on the swap, then you reduce their physical damage. This Conkeldurr is now at -2, and against Buzzwole's huge physical attack, physical defense rather, it means it simply is not going to be able to get the kill that way. So Conkeldurr is now way down into the red. He does hit me with a huge Drain Punch, and quite fortunately for him, it is actually enough to be able to get the kill because he got a crit. So, for those of you who didn't know, critical hits will actually ignore any stat drops that are in effect. They do not ignore stat boosts that you have on your own Pokemon. So if you are at +2 and you get a crit and your opponent is at +2 defense, you will have your +2 attack in the calculation, but their defenses will not be taken into effect. So he was able to ignore his -2 attack by having that crit in chance. So that's it was lucky for him, but that's how those crit mechanics work. So instead I go into Pinsir because I realize Pinsir is going to be able to outspeed this Landorus. It's not a Choice Scarfer because it had the rocks, and I know that I'm going to be able to outspeed and knock him down by going for the return. I didn't want to risk the priority quick attack just on the off chance it wasn't enough to be able to knock him out. So in comes Kyurem. Now, this thing could be Choice Scarfed very easily, but I decide, screw it, we'll try a return, we'll see what damage we can get. It's pretty respectable. And poor little Pinsir, retreating it wasn't exactly an option because the rocks are still on the field, and if it has less than 50% of its health, 50% of its health points remaining, I won't actually be able to bring it back in, so staying into Suicide with it is really my best option. And yeah, we're really getting down into the late stages of the game where I only have Heracross left. It's a 1v3 and everything now comes down to old, reliable, trusty Heracross. Close combat in for the kill because he has 3 Pokemon left and I need to decide which move I want to be locked into to face all 3 Pokemon. So I choose close combat. It has a good balance between power and accuracy. It doesn't have the power the Mega Horn does, however, it doesn't risk the chances of missing. I believe Mega Horn only has an 85% accuracy, so we go for the close combat and everything comes down to whether or not I can one-hit KO a Raikou after Stealth Rocks, and indeed I can. So I am at -2 defense, -2 special defense, but a massive +2 attack on a full attack invested Choice Scarf Heracross. Believe me, that is going to hurt. In comes Conkeldurr, and if he doesn't have priority, I will win the game, and indeed there is no priority, so per little Conkeldurr, because the old reliable Heracross comes in, gets the 3-0 sweep at the very end, pulling everything out of the bag for me. So thank you for watching. If you would like to see more Wi-Fi battle content, you can find some here on the screen at the end of the video. There'll be a few more matches from our Hideaway League. And if you'd like to participate in the league, feel free to leave a comment down below and I can get you sorted out on that side. So thanks for watching and goodbye.